Presenting Take First Alert. Welcome to This Week in Kansas with your host, Tim Brown.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Kansas. Thank you for being with us this morning. A three-judge panel says a block grant funding concept for schools is unconstitutional, but the Kansas Supreme Court put a hold on that ruling. The panel wanted the legislature to come up with an additional $50 million in school funding almost immediately. There are several new laws that are now in place for Kansans. Everything from how we can carry guns to betting on fantasy sports to local elections will be affected. Let's go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of things to talk about this morning. We are going to start with this education funding challenge that the state of Kansas is facing. And you know, this last session, Jim, we saw this block grant idea come to fruition, and it looks like that may be short-lived.
Yeah. What the Supreme Court said, or the Court of Appeal, the District Court, the three-judge panel, basically said, we don't care what you call school finance. You can call it block grants or per pupil or weighted. We're going to go to Article 6, Section 6, Subsection B, suitable finance for public schools. We've created two tests, equity, which is fairness, and adequacy, are you paying for what you're demanding? We're going to apply those tests and on to whatever you pass. And when they looked at the block grant, they said, you failed miserably in both categories. The equity one particularly irritated them because we had made a deal with the court and put money into equity last year and took it back. And that's the one they said fix immediately. And the court stayed it, but they also put language in their order staying it. Staying is a fancy legal term that says freeze things as they are right now. In that order, they said this will be taken up expeditiously.
So Ed, this could happen within the next, I guess, couple of months. I don't know what expeditiously by the court necessarily means, but could be fairly soon.
Well, they tried to instruct the Department of Education to start doing it immediately, just start allocating those funds. And then the Supreme Court stepped in and stayed the action. The opinion, quite intricate, 87 pages, took apart this the political games that were played this session that were designed to convince the public that we were spending more for school operations. And essentially they went point by point through that and said that has no basis in fact. And so they not only are ordering an immediate $50 million, but they're also saying, don't try to trick the public on school funding.
And when you're talking about tricking the public, I think what the reference is, a lot of that money had to go towards retirement, basically, for teachers and administrators that was guaranteed and by law had to be paid. So when you look at the overall figure, and I think the governor said that more money was going to schools, a lot of it didn't go into the classrooms.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. For years, like any business, there's a package of employment benefits, salary, health insurance, and retirement. The state of Kansas is no different. And for years, and we still have that pot of money, we put money into the retirement capers. What the governor did this year, and his followers, is cut out the little piece that we do for teachers and education, send it over to the pot of money that we send for schools to operate and hire teachers and books and all of that. It sits in that account 10 seconds and a button is pushed and sends it right back into the retirement pot, because that's where it gets invested, and that's very important to make the retirement system work. But that 10 seconds lets them stand up in good faith and look people in the eye and say, see, we put more money into schools. Now, if your child's in third grade, what's going to happen next year is they're going to be in a bigger third grade class because we can't hire as many teachers. We're not going to be able to hire as good teachers because we won't have the money to put the packages together. They're not going to have the books, and they're not going to have the resources that you would expect a public school in third grade in 2015 to have. And you're going to start seeing programs start to go away. And that's the tell. After the block grant passed, you saw schools close. You saw a lot of schools close early. You saw announcement of programs. You saw contract freezes. You saw all the things that people do when they lose money to fund the programs.
Ed, it looks like if this does happen, like it looks like it's going to happen, $50 million is the first number. Where does the government come up with this money?
Well, they'll probably have to have a special session and appropriate that money. I don't see any way around it. I mean, they can have a standoff, I suppose, with the courts. As Jim said, a year ago, the governor, the legislature, the courts agreed. This is what we do. And then the session, the governor and legislature this year reneged on that.
Well, and I remember last year when we talked about this, it was widely thought that this was a gift to the governor and the legislature, because it was a smaller figure than I think a lot of people anticipated. And then, the second part of the lawsuit, that other shoe still has not dropped, and that's a $400 or $500 million shoe potentially.
And a year ago, the governor embraced it.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally said, "Oh, we'll take care of that."
Yeah.
In short order.
Now,
So
what was going on last year that would have made the governor more oh, wait, we had an election, and now it's over.
Well, there you go.
But really, and you touched on it briefly, the big piece that will cause huge disruption in our state government is the adequacy piece.
Yep.
Are we paying for what we're demanding from schools every day? That's the $400 to $500 million question that won't happen quickly. I think the Supreme Court will take time, analyze the three-judge panel decision, because if you remember, they had asked the three judges to reevaluate adequacy using some other standards, what were called the Roe standards, but basically looking to make sure that you're analyzing the right things and making sure you're costing those things correctly before.
well, you could say the court's been timid in going after this, but maybe they're being careful. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, one quick thing, a point we need to get to before we take a break. So, pretty excited about a special session? This sounds like fun.
No. Special session are miserable generally, and after 115 days,
Yeah.
the opportunity to spend another couple of weeks with my colleagues in Topeka just doesn't excite me as much as it might in other years.
If a special session were to happen probably in the fall, would that be accurate?
Now we're just guessing. The language, the three-judge panel said we had to do it by yesterday. The court froze it or stayed it, but they put in there expeditiously. That's a red flag to me as a lawyer that says that kind of language says we're going to take this up, this piece, equity, quickly, make a decision quickly, so be ready. So I would anticipate maybe after Labor Day.
Interesting. All right, let's take another commercial break, our first commercial break. Then when we come back, we're going to talk about some Supreme Court rulings that had direct impacts on the state of Kansas.
Wichita RV, where you'll find the largest selection of fifth wheels and travel trailers in Kansas. Take a tour and enjoy the comforts of the latest Coachman models. Come by and see our Chaparral and Brookstone fifth wheels or Freedom Express and Apex travel trailers. Better built, better quality. Stop by either of our two convenient locations. East, just 3 miles east of Andover Road on the north side of Highway 54, heading to Augusta, or west at Mason Kellogg on the north side of the street.
BattleBox is TV's hottest competition.
That thing is on fire!
And tonight, for the final 16,
This is like getting to the major leagues.
it's win or go home.
We're not going down without a fight.
All new BattleBots, tonight, 9/8 Central on ABC.
When a storm is on the horizon, when the clock is ticking, you need time. Cake First Alert is there, keeping you ahead of the storm, giving you the time you need. Jay Prater on the Cake First Alert team. Always tracking, always alerting, always protecting.
And welcome back. The Supreme Court had several rulings that had direct impacts here on the state of Kansas, and one that I think a lot of people looked at was the ruling that impacted Chris Kobach's election bills and laws, or one in particular. And Jim, if you'll update us on that.
Yeah. Okay. Remember in Kansas about 2 years ago we passed a law that says if you want to register as a new registrant or change your registrant because your name is changed, there's a whole series of reasons why you would change your registration. You would have to show a birth certificate, a passport, or some other kind of ancient document showing citizenship. There is a state form on which you register and a federal form. The federal form is guided by the Help America Vote Act and doesn't have that requirement. The state form does have that requirement. If you remember last fall, the Secretary of State said we're going to have 2 tiers and only going to vote for federal officers if you do the federal form, president, senator, Congress, state offices if you do the state. And I'm going to win in the Supreme Court because state law controls on elections and the federal form must conform. Yeah, not so much. The U.S. Supreme Court in the state versus Arizona case said no, you can't have a two-tiered system. The federal form is a fully vested you in voting in states, and that would include state offices. So in Kansas, you can now register under the state form and vote for all the offices, or under the federal form and vote for all the offices.
But and the folks who are going to have to administer this are the county election officers, and since there aren't that many who register under the federal form, it's probably not an administrative burden, but it's another complication of the voting process.
But Ed, how do we catch all of these people that are cheating at the voting?
Well, as of this morning, I guess as of midnight, our Secretary of State now has prosecutorial power, and I'm expecting something to happen before sundown. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to watch the news tonight and see how far we go with that.
Well, Jim, do you think he's out there rounding up illegal voters right now?
I just refer back to Barry Grissom's statement last fall when he said, "Dear Mr. Kobach, you have not referred one case to my office in 4 years, and I really do know election law. Thank you for asking." And I think that really says everything about voter fraud in Kansas. Do people make mistakes? Absolutely. One of the cases, I just love this anecdote, that Chris brought before the Judiciary Committee was an elderly couple who had voted the same place for 30 or 40 years. They went into a nursing home, which was in a different district. But what did they do on Election Day? They got in their car and went back to the same place they'd voted for 30 years, which was the wrong place. Now, fraud, felony, prosecution.
Throw them in the pan.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we can prosecute those hardened criminals now, because I think we need to get them off the street.
Yeah. What the district attorney of Johnson County said was, we decline prosecution. They called their children, and it was dealt with appropriately.
So Chris Kobach says he will fight this, and again, I don't know where it'll go, but it will cost money.
Kansas always has enough money to prosecute or defend lawsuits. We're in litigation. The Attorney General is defending laws all the time. Millions of dollars in legal fees that could be better spent on schools, roads, highway patrol, prisons.
And on and on. Okay, Supreme Court action, abortion, big one.
Yeah, Kansas has become an outlier state on abortion law. We went, a lot of states have made laws restricting third trimester abortions. A variety of different laws have been passed across the country. Kansas went a step further and went into the second trimester and banned a procedure that doctors said was the best medical practice for this kind of procedure at this time, but it is gruesome. And so it was banned. The district court stayed the execution of the law, froze it, and the Attorney General today announced that they would appeal that decision to find out if they have violated constitutional law by this outlier step. And
I tell you what, we've got, let's go ahead and take a break now. This is a good time for it. Then when we come back, we'll talk about same-sex marriage, because that's a big one too. We'll be right back.
Our triple sweet super Doppler indicates a storm cell with the potential to produce a dangerously awesome tornado shake. Expect crunchy peanut butter, gourmet chocolate, and creamy soft serve in a tornadic twist of a shake. Okay, we're calling it right here. It's the great peanut butter chocolate tornado shake from Spangles. I repeat, it's the peanut butter chocolate tornado shake from Spangles. They're only here for a limited time. Be extremely cautious. The taste will blow you away.
My hero isn't able to slam dunk. Doesn't make $1 million a year. Can't rap at all. My hero helped my mom when she was pregnant. Takes care of us. Travels to heaven, loves me. My hero, my dad.
If you're facing an unplanned pregnancy, learn more today about parenting or adoption. While there are unwanted pregnancies, there are no unwanted children.
And welcome back. We're talking about some of the rulings by the Supreme Court that came down in the last week. all kinds of headlines. Same-sex marriage, Affordable Care Act, there's a couple others. Let's start with same-sex marriage. Again, here in Kansas, and I think a lot of people don't even realize that quietly, here, for example, here in Sedgwick County, marriage licenses had been granted for same-sex couples for a while now.
Yeah. Kansas law had we have laws prohibiting it, but court decisions saying that you can't prohibit someone from getting married under the 14th Amendment and equal protection due process of laws type of concepts. The Supreme Court came in and made that a nationwide prohibition against banning that. The key thing that's important, I think, is to distinguish between civil or secular marriages, courthouse marriages, and religious or spiritual marriages. The Supreme Court was dealing with secular or courthouse marriages, saying you couldn't deny a license, you couldn't deny benefits of spousehood, you couldn't deny the basic rights of a married couple. It does not require churches who have a faith-based belief that that's an appropriate way to get married from marrying same-sex couples.
And Ed, again, I think this is one of those areas where I think a lot of folks don't realize that this was already happening here, at least in Sedgwick County and quite a few other counties across the state.
Well, and across the nation, there's been resistance, pockets of resistance in a few states, but I think I've read recently that most all the folks, local officials who issue these licenses are complying, and local court officials are saying comply. So I think the resistance will take place in a different forum. We've heard, spent a lot of time last year on how do you protect your business from a gay marriage, which turned out to be futile. But that kind of issue of religious freedom and expression will, I'm sure, come up again. And who knows what form it'll take.
Affordable Care Act, the latest ruling solidifies Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it, and it looks like it will be here to stay, at least in some form. Yeah,
basically what the Supreme Court said, that we're going to look at the totality of a law to see what the intent of Congress is, and it's clear that Congress intended that the exchanges, which are kind of like what you buy airline tickets, airfare tickets on. You go online, you type in your needs, and they give you price quotes from insurance companies, and you buy it that way. There was some conflict that there was some language in one paragraph and in one page of a 1,800-page bill that said only state exchanges, not federal exchanges, would get tax credits associated with health insurance. The Supreme Court said, no, we're going to look at the whole law. And in fact, that isn't the case, and reaffirmed it. What it means,
it was a 6-4 decision.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
6-3 decision, excuse me. Yeah. And Chief Justice wrote that opinion, and that may change the nature of the issue at the national level. But it might also have implications here. I know, Jim, you've worked on extending Medicaid under the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, and hadn't made much progress yet, but little by little that's going to come back, and I think you and your colleagues are going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that's always surprised me is our current Medicaid share is 60-40 federal, and they're talking 90-10, and we don't want to do it. But issues will, I think, take a new route.
Yeah, I agree. The biggest takeaway from the Supreme Court case for Kansans is 70,000 people who use that exchange and get tax credits are going to keep their insurance and maintain the affordability. And I do think it puts pressure on folks to step up on Medicaid expansion. It's hard to say no to 150,000 people who are eligible for insurance that's paid for. We just won't take the money.
Just real quickly, EPA restrictions on power plants. That's another area where obviously has an impact here in the state of Kansas. Westar will save a lot of money that way. I know our Congressman Pompeo read several releases where he was really happy about this decision.
It's a short term, it's going to save money short term, but long term the cost could be devastating if action isn't taken to control human caused global warming. Now, if this isn't the right way, let's stop avoiding the conversation. Let's have a conversation on how do we reduce the carbon input into our atmosphere that's causing potentially devastating results down the road.
All right, let's take a final commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about the legislative session and the new laws that just went into effect.
If you like quality and selection, you'll love Yoders Ornamental Concrete in Burton, with the best selection of fountains, bird baths, planters, benches, yard lights, animals, and figurines. You're sure to find the right piece for the right spot at your home or office. Since 1984, the Yoder family has been committed in making the finest of quality statuary, the largest statuary outlet in Kansas, located on Highway 50 in Burton, Kansas. That's Yoders Ornamental Concrete.
It's Mattress Firm's huge 4th of July sale. For 2 hours only this Wednesday through Sunday, get huge doorbuster savings, like memory foam pillows for only $9.99 and pillow top queen sets just $199.99. Plus, get our best financing offer of 0% APR for 72 months. And up to $300 in Mattress Firm Cool Cash with select mattress set purchases. Good towards free delivery, free accessories, and a free frame. So through Sunday, don't miss Mattress Firm's 4th of July sale.
And welcome back. Our lawmakers were in Topeka for a long, long time this session, so they got all kinds of things done and all kinds of valuable laws were passed that will impact the great citizens of the great state of Kansas. And I'm being a little bit facetious there. I think a lot of times, Jim, and no offense, I know you won't take it this way. You might, I don't know. But the kind of the joke is that I've heard many times, what's the best thing that came out of the session was the fact that everybody went home. So lots of laws. Guns, human trafficking, elections changed. We had some alcohol laws changed. Property tax limit, all kinds of things. Which one do you want to start with, guys? Let's start with guns. That's kind of, I think,
this is what they call a constitutional right to carry. Kansas, about 10 years ago, passed a law that said you could conceal your weapon on your person if you went and took some training, showed you had some basic skill levels, and did a background check to make sure that you were not a felon or abusive husband or mental illness. What this law does is say that's no longer required, that if you are able to purchase a weapon, you're able to carry it concealed on your person.
Ed, good idea?
I want to talk about the property tax limit. These wizards of state finance who have been lurching from one fiscal crisis to another had the wisdom to say, now we know how local government should run their finances. I think that's the height of, I don't know what.
Hypocrisy?
Yeah, thank you. And that got inserted. There wasn't no hearing on it. There was nothing but an insertion kind of on the floor at the last minute. And then they had to go back and correct it because they got it wrong in the first place. So there's great hypocrisy in these folks at state level who have just been going from crisis to crisis, telling local cities and counties how to run their finances.
Well, and Jim, this gets back to...
Sorry to interject.
No, that's okay. This gets back to the, we hear about local control and the same group of people that complains when the federal government comes in and tries to tell us as a state what to do, but it's okay for them to tell municipalities and cities what to do.
That was the part, the note that hit my ear was the same people who scream so violently when the federal government says we should try to cover people in health care, as that's takes away state rights. The federal government shouldn't tell us how to clean up our air, that's the state's rights, and these people are, and then they turn around and say, well, it's okay for us to tell cities and counties. So what I've come to the conclusion is it's bad for anybody to tell this legislature what to do, but it's never bad for the legislature to tell people.
And both guns and the property tax issue apply there.
Exactly.
I mean, here in our wisdom, we're going to tell local officials how to deal with guns.
Yeah. Well, in Kansas has a long history with guns in terms of public safety, in terms of sportsmanship, in terms of family history. I don't hear a lot of folks saying this is a good idea to let people carry concealed weapons without training and some sort of license. I mean, I think everybody, has that common sense says that, yes, I believe in the Second Amendment, yes, I believe in guns, but there should be we should try to keep guns out of the hands of felons and mentally ill people and out of churches and out of schools. Those are reasonable things.
One of the interesting points that I heard from somebody who does have a concealed carry license, they were talking to me about some of the training they went through in their class, and not just how to operate and how to handle the weapon, but also some of the legal ramifications if they do decide to take that gun out in a situation. And that person told me that was some of the most valuable training they'd ever had, because it really brought it home. If you're going to do this, how serious this was and how it can affect the rest of your life personally. And that worries me with this new law, with folks that can go out and purchase the gun and then they don't have to have that training. And again, I know I'll get emails on this because we do every time we talk about guns. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be allowed to own guns, but it is something that is a tremendous responsibility, and that's why I think this is valuable to have that training.
I agree. I think most Kansans agree.
Let's move on from guns. I think everybody's getting sick of that. I know Ed is. Drinking. You can bring your own bottle to businesses, and this is kind of for these little art classes and things, and you can get drunk while you draw pictures, I guess.
Well, what it is there the question of what is a drinking establishment for purposes of selling alcohol. There are business models where I have a facility that you could use for various things, including art is the one.
Yeah.
And if I bring my bottle in, am I now under all of the rules and regulations of a bar? And what this law says is no, that the person responsible for the alcohol would be the person who brings it in. You're not serving it, you're not in the business of making money selling alcohol, you're just providing a venue for activities that include drinking.
And I really don't mean that people go to those things just get drunk. They may have a glass of wine and do their art. Elections. This is interesting, Ed. I want you to jump in on this one in our last minute and a half or so. The elections, we're moving things to the fall.
Well, we just extended our mayor's term from 4 years. That's what most folks thought they were voting for, to, I think, 4 years and a half.
Yeah.
He'll be the longest serving mayor. But yes, we're now moving these to the fall and off-year elections. I doubt that it's going to make much difference, but there's some logic in campaigning in February versus campaigning in September. So let's see if it works. Most folks that have studied this say it doesn't make much difference in terms of benefiting one group or another.
Jim, you can bet on fantasy leagues now, is that right?
Yeah, and what you're thinking of here now is your office pool. If you pick a Super Bowl and put $10 in a pot, there was some question whether you could start arresting all of the office pools in the city and the state. So we said, no, that's going to be called a different kind of gambling, and it's not going to be illegal.
Could be a revenue generator for the state.
Common sense, we're not going to get involved with Super Bowl or World Series.
Last 15, 20 seconds, one more that I wanted to point out. Human trafficking, this is a new law that allows for civil.
In 15 seconds, we have a criminal law that, and very strict. You can't sell people for sexual reasons, bring them over here to make them sex slaves. Yeah. Now we gave them a cause of action to sue and to go after the money and try to break up the money. It gives the Attorney General a cause of action against these people and the victims.
You said you guys didn't do anything good. That was a good one. Anyway, thanks guys for being on the program. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at thisweekinkansas@cake.com. I hope you have a wonderful week.
Listen up, 'cause I got something